at the age of 13, caught up in the evangelical movement in a big way. Rome seemed to be at the antipodes of all that was scriptural. Had I come across then what years later I came across, I would perhaps have been a little more docile. My private occupation at that time was converting Catholics to the true faith. Little did I know that I needed conversion, rather like one of the two great saints of this day, Saul of Tarsus. Saul, Saul, why are you persecuting me? And so it is that great good faith can be completely led astray by its own lack of complete vision. Vision. It was years later that, if I can recall correctly, through the just casual handing on of a leaflet from the young married woman who was teaching me Italian in Dublin at the time when I was a novice at Kilnacrot, that I came to be aware of what had happened in Rome precisely, and moreover to one of our Protestant brethren who was fairly keen on demolishing the Catholic Church, and indeed he was fairly keen on demolishing its figurehead, the Pope itself. So much so that he'd actually bought a dagger and had chiselled on it Morte al Papa, death to the Pope, and he meant business, and he was already in Rome with business in his mind, and he was preparing a lecture against the Catholic Church, specifically against the Blessed Virgin Mary. He had children, 2 little boys and a girl, I believe, and he wanted to give them a treat while he prepared his lecture, revised it. It was the siesta, however, and he couldn't buy what he wanted to buy to keep them happy, chocolate from the shop at Trefontane. It's a Trappist monastery there in Rome. And so he was preparing, waiting for the shop to open, preparing his lecture while they played football. And he went to look for them, and he found them eventually in this grotto on the other side of the monastery. He tried to move them, they were stuck, and they were so heavy he couldn't. They were looking at someone or something, crying out, Belladonna, Belladonna. Eventually his eyes precisely were opened, and he saw her as himself. And this is how she looked. We notice that she has a book in her hand, and the long, and quite long it was, apparition that he had was extremely detailed. Until death he was able to remember every single word of the communication of the Virgin of the Revelation, or of Revelation as it would come through in English. And it was a complete instruction on the fact that the true church was that whose heart was in Rome, precisely where he was. And he had eventually to go and see the one that she defined precisely in this apparition as the vicar of his son. And that was very much the antipodes of all that he could imagine. And so it was that all the articles of faith were given to him. Something similar happened also around about the same time, actually, in a prison cell in America to Claude Newman, a Negro who hadn't been even baptized, couldn't read or write, and the Madonna appeared to him after he put on, by chance, a miraculous medal which another prisoner didn't really want, and asked him if he would like her to be his mother. And then she gave him instruction that he had to ask precisely for instruction from a Catholic priest. And she also gave him instruction directly herself, so that when it came to being catechized, the chaplain was quite puzzled that he knew so much about the real presence, about confession, and so on. And he then realized what had happened, and even asked him, "Did the lady tell you anything about this?" And he was able to express things in a quaint way. It was the true faith that we have. So these were interventions that I knew nothing about. These were in around 1947, and it was in the early 90s that I came across this. And indeed, I was so moved that I wrote these words, placing myself precisely in the shoes of the typical evangelical that I was, and with a smile of reason, thinking we can dismiss all this stuff. And seeing then, by writing this, putting it in my own mouth as it were, how pride can get in the way. We have perfect knowledge, do we not? And we don't want really to know any more. And that is the problem. Good faith is no longer there when genuinely we don't want to know any more. It then becomes bad faith. La Vergine della Rivelazione, Trefontane, 12 di aprile 1947, so it was on the 12th of April 1947. Of course, Trefontane is important on this day because that's where the Apostle of the Gentiles was beheaded, and the three fountains, Trefontane, sprang up where his head bounced 3 times. He, of course, gave us about half the New Testament, the Word. And it's fitting, therefore, that you should appear with the Word, a book, in her hands before her breast. E dunque vera questa verità che non volevo credere, perché non era scritta né sentita là, almeno alle mie orecchie, nel testo sacro, dove solo fu udita quella voce che non ha né bocca né parola. Gioventù, che paradiso, la semplicità, la Vergine che non veniva mai sull'orizzonte del credente, che sapeva tutto bene, qui ormai mi insegna delle strane pratiche. Non so però se anche l'estasi sa ben illuminare i lucidi. The smile of reason. And when that happens, we can be sure that there's a blockage in the soul. One detects when talking to a soul whether that soul is in mode of pride or humility. And the signal is simple. Is there input or output? The soul that genuinely is humble is docile. The word comes from docio. We need to learn. The disciple learns. The proud man teaches and knows many things. And so people who talk a lot tendentially are pride. And people who are silent and still tendentially are humble, because they listen not only in meditation to new truths and to books that might have truths containing things they did not know, but also to people who might be voice boxes, because people also could have their truth and participate in the truth. Humility, therefore, before another person genuinely stands in a pause mode, a thirsty mode, a still and quiet mode, not even preparing the answer. First taking in all the possibilities of new truth, and then wanting to know more. Of course, they sift, but at least they've heard the other side. The problem with Protestantism is that it presumes that man can get it right on his own. We know from alas what was given to Blessed Serafina, the foundress of the Order of the Angels, that Martin Luther suffered from pride. She was in his birthplace on the day of his birthday, and there was a huge celebration, and she was looking for a Catholic church so to make an hour of adoration. She found a church and knelt by the closed door, as she thought it was a Catholic church, and the best sacrament was inside. But an angel told her to get up, for it was a Protestant church, and wanted her to see where the person being feasted on that day was, and why he was there. Apparently pride had led him astray, and that pride got him into serious trouble on the other side, and she was shown it. And for that reason she herself was very strict on this question of pride in the nuns that she was forming. She had a great devotion to the angels and was aware of their presence. The angels are not proud, and those who on earth are proud participate in the original sin of the one who was, Lucifer. Now Lucifer knows how to function well. He knows that the fullness of grace and truth is in the one true church founded by the Saviour, on Peter, as we have in the Gospel of this day. Therefore he will try to break it up and shatter it. What will he do? He will use what is apparently convincing, scandal, and therefore a rebellion, and will find a very talented person or talented persons to do his work for him. Anything that works he will use. But now in our time he has gone a stage further. He is working within the one true church. Infiltration. Anything that works he'll use. So as we were warned, at Akita and Garabandal we would have internal division, even at the high echelons of power. Bishop against bishop, cardinal against cardinal. Anything that works, the devil will use, because he just wants to get souls. Let us be aware that whatever weakness is on the human plane, the divine is not touched, and this is the lack of vision of the Protestant. Only the human is seen. The one true church has the power and authority and grace of Christ himself, and although damaged, is not affected by its human weakness, because the divine is its essence. After all, we're all in a mess, and to pronounce judgment on other Christians as though we were superior is ourselves to be in pride mode, perhaps more miserable again. The fact is this: the church is not a museum for saints. It is a hospital for sinners.
Christus